Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm John Barbin. With me is Jeff Dover, and let's talk football.
Let's talk football. This is the end of our week 0 review. So the week 0 is almost in the books. Watched some two pretty entertaining games just there at the end, Kansas and Fresno State and UNLV and Idaho State.
Which was way more competitive than I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, maybe going to that game at UNLV, and you're like, wow, there's no point because it's
I was like, I don't want to go to a game with a 26.5-point spread. And, you know, it's like, what kind of atmosphere will it be? And instead it was a game. It was a game, and we could have been there, but, you know, it's okay. Okay.
So let's start talking about the Kansas game. What'd you think of this one?
At the first quarter was somewhat competitive, right? Both teams moved the ball. It was tied.
Both teams scored on their first drive.
Both teams scored on their first drive. The announcers were even making a little bit of a joke about, I guess we're not really going to mention the punters' names.
Yeah.
And then over time, it just became clear that Kansas was the better overall team and sort of started to overwhelm Fresno towards the second half, where they were just kind of getting whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And their defensive line and offensive line eventually took the whole game over. And it was just clear Fresno was just overmatched over time.
Yeah, no, very true. And you could really see the difference, like you said, in the trenches, right? Between the offensive line, defensive line. There's a couple players with 97 or what it was for Kansas.
Caldwell, he was really
amazing.
Showed up as his nose tackle.
Yeah,
there.
and and if you're a Kansas fan, you know, Fresno State's not the best team, okay? But if you're a Kansas fan, you got to be pleased with what you saw both on offense and defense. The defense worked really well, did not let Fresno State establish the run.
Nope.
And they didn't give up a lot in the air either. And so the only thing they'd have to shore up really is their third and long pass defense.
Yeah.
Because he completed it a few times.
Yeah. So Fresno's third down efficiency was pretty outstanding. They were 7 for 15, and all of them were over the middle, deep ins or dig routes. Yeah. And it seemed like Kansas stopped them on first down, stopped them on second down, had them in third and long multiple times. And he just, Warner's kid there, just kept completing the over the middle pass. Mm-hmm. And the Kansas defense, if the middle linebacker just didn't sink fast enough or whatever it was, there was always a bit of space, and Warner always found it. At least he found it many times, to the point where they kept a few drives alive in it. You know, I guess that was sort of encouraging, at least for a Fresno fan, that they could do that. And for the Kansas, you're right, for the Kansas defense, the corners, the announcers made a good point towards the end of the game. You never heard them call the corners' names because the corners were shutting stuff down on the outside.
Yep.
And it was kind of the linebackers and the safeties' responsibilities over the middle, where there seemed to be some, I don't know if you want to say vulnerability, but there was some space there for Fresno to be completing those long third downs when they needed them. But again, it was nowhere near enough.
No.
But that's the one thing that a Kansas fans like. I don't like the fact that they were almost 50% on third down efficiency there.
Yeah,
like
that's a great, like they handily won the game. But that's going to give the coach a lot of, you know, some tape and stuff to work on. Like, we got to get better this week, you know, for next week and that stuff. The other thing I'll say about Kansas is that I really like the balance and the efficiency on their offense. They had 207 yards rushing and 176 passing, right? So it's very balanced. And Jalon Daniels is the 6th year. He's a veteran. It's it's the understatement of the year.
Yeah.
And was 18 for 20 and had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. And he looked great. He looked very comfortable, and they ran in, passed the ball at will. So,
and the key thing there is no interceptions. Daniels was really turnover prone last year. He protected the ball. He found receivers when he needed to. I don't like how much they ran him. He took a few more hits that he needed to take.
Yeah.
Now they got him out of the game at the end there, but you know, him running is part of the game. So you kind of have to have that in there. Yeah. But they were controlling them, I think, enough that I would have preferred him running a little bit less, but maybe that's just how the offense has to function right now.
No, true. And it like, again, that's one of his strengths. Yeah. So it'd be crazy not to do it.
Right.
However, you know, if you're a Kansas fan and you saw him, you know, run in and get hit, and then he was sort of limping a little bit after, and you said, you can't see that, you know, it's because he's missed so much time due to injury. But the other thing I'll say is that Cam Pickett looks like he's a legit wide receiver. He had a really big game. He had 2 touchdowns, 6 catches for 77 yards. So he's got it's a talented person he can throw to on the outside. So no, Kansas looked really good. The offense and defensive line looked really strong. You know, super balanced running and passing. The booth is the first The home game at the newly renovated stadium looked really good. It was really loud. You rarely see quarterbacks have to put the hands over the helmet to get the call.
Yeah, it's like,
at Kansas.
kind of control that a little bit for your guys.
Right.
Jeez, come on.
But both teams though, like it was that which is a great sign for Kansas. So
they just got a $300 million donation from the Booth family, I guess. So that it's not fully finished. There's more renovations to go, but at least they can play there now. Yeah, which is pretty cool.
So. And it looked really good, and it was and the fact that if Kansas has a home field advantage, I think it's something they haven't had in so much in the past.
And the all blue uniforms are awesome. Again, that's one of my favorite helmets. I got them on the wall here, and the wheat in the end zone, the wheat graphic. I mean, they're really stepping it up there. That program looks like it's going to keep elevating. Leipold should stay there forever.
Yes,
and I'm sure the fans want him to stay there. The only other thing that's concerning I guess not concerning, but needs to be cleaned up is the holding penalties. Kansas had 9 penalties for 72 yards, and I think all of them were offensive holding, if not 8 of them.
There was a stretch there on the one drive where I think it was like the left tackle and the left guard both had 2 each on the one thing,
and then a couple of receivers got penalties on some swing passes, and it's just holding, holding all over the place. I was actually mentioned it was amazing they ran for as many yards as they did, and kept it going as much as they did with how many times they had runs taken away from home.
It's just a killer. So that part was rough. So so handily won the game, very balanced on offense. But like you said, that's a really good point about the third down efficiency. That you need to clamp that down.
And that's another thing. Kansas was only 2 for 10 on their third down efficiency. Maybe partly because they didn't need to.
Well, they went for it a lot on fourth down.
Yeah, so they made it to the fourth down. So that's kind of it's disguised
2 for 3 on fourth down is
right. Yeah. Disguised by actually going for it on fourth down. Yeah. But overall, they look pretty good. They look pretty strong. The Big 12 showed up well this week.
Yeah, well, and that's what the concern with this was. There was a lot of Kansas lost a lot, and there was a lot of transfers, and you're just not sure how it looks. But it looked like they looked pretty good. Yeah. So now again, this is against Fresno State. But
they dominated them the way you would expect a power team to dominate the not power team. So
right, which is unlike this next game we're going to talk about, which was UNLV and Idaho State. What we thought with UNLV was really, this is Mullen returning. He's has a reputation of being a coach whisperer. He had 2 good transfers come in, right, with Orji and Calandria, and but Idaho State gave them all they could handle today.
Yeah, so they're platooning QBs here. So Anthony Calandria, the transfer from Virginia, he can do both. He can run and pass. He was 195 yards with a TD and no interceptions. Alex Orji was 3 for 3.
Yeah,
for
not
37
many
yards. But he
had 6 rushes
for 34 yards, a TD. But he also had a TD that he should have had in the first quarter. As he was crossing the goal line, the ball was knocked out of his hands. And they also missed 2 very makeable field goals. So UNLV should have had 13 more. Very easily could have had 13 more points in this game.
Yeah, but the concern is that the quarterback for Idaho State went 30 for 50 for 380 yards, and he had 3 interceptions. But the running back had 18 carries for 132 yards. So that is,
and they put up 31 points with the quarterback throwing 3 picks.
Yes,
so that's not
that's very concerning, and it's they're a long way. They lost a lot from last year, but they were really good last year, and this is going to be fans for UNLV should expect a bit of a rebuild, because if this is what Idaho State was like, then they're going to have some trouble this year in their Mountain West schedule.
With that said, UNLV ran for 300 yards, which is a ton. Yeah, and Jet Thomas had 147 yards and 3 TDs on 10 carries. So
that guy looked good.
You'll take 14.7 yards per carry every time.
And Calandria had 93 yards rushing too. So that in almost 200 yards passing. So that's. I'll be surprised. I'll be interested to see just how much they use Orji going forward, because this did feel by the end of the game, it sort of felt like, 2/3 Calandria, 1/3 Orji. Like, that's not splitting QBs.
Idaho State had 555 total yards. They actually outgained UNLV. Yeah. So there's
just the turnovers. So
turnovers. Otherwise, way more competitive of game than we expected. But UNLV with 300 rushing yards. So they got the win. They were expected to win. That this was nowhere near the type the way the game they thought would look. What was it, a 26.5 point spread, I think it was? So there's plenty of work to do on UNLV's side. I don't know what the strategy is here with the two QBs, if they're going to keep doing that. Orji looks like a man amongst boys out there.
Yeah, well, that's what made him a 5-star recruit. When he went to Michigan, it was like, oh, this is, when he gets off the bus, he looks like the guy you want as your QB.
At Michigan, he didn't look as big as he does here. Like, he's big, but Michigan.
I thought he looked pretty big at Michigan too.
Okay. Let me say it another way around. At least there's other players on the field that are also enormously huge. On this field, between UNLV and Idaho State, not as many guys are there to make Orji look less enormous.
You know what I mean? No, you're right. He's huge, and he's
huge.
And it really stood out against the players there.
The backdrop of these two teams he shows up like even bigger, right?
Yeah, no, very true.
So,
but yeah, it was that's way too much given up on defense for UNLV, and it's considering they had Idaho State had 4 turnovers. The fact that it was a 1 touchdown, it was a 1-score game, and Idaho State had the ball driving in the 4th quarter. So
the Idaho State QB threw. They had 4 turnovers. That was the difference in the game. So they could have easily won that game. He threw a bad pick in the end zone too. So,
and thank God we watched a lot of the highlights for this game, and which is great because it was moving slow as molasses at one point because Idaho State had 10 penalties for 80 yards and UNLV had 8 penalties for 90 yards. So it was really the refs really wanted to get involved in this game as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, the takeaway here, I don't know what you say. Idaho State showed up better than the odds makers expected, and maybe the UNLV showed up a little bit worse than the odds makers.
Not just a little bit. You can't give up 550 yards to Idaho State. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Like that's the UNLV. I'm concerned. You're a UNLV fan. You're concerned.
Yeah.
Dan Mullen's great. There was the quarterbacks looked like how I wanted them to look for a Dan Mullen team.
Yeah.
Everything else is a concern.
Basically, everything's a concern.
Everything else is a concern because it's all the penalties were bad. They gave up way too much, and in a home game, it's just that's concerning.
I mean, I guess you could say the defense is a concern. The offense obviously could move the ball, but the defense, boy, it needs some work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's really all we're going to cover was these games.
Those are that because the other ones,
are still going.
Listen, it was real football today.
Yeah,
it's way better than watching any of the preseason stuff. It was great for college to be back. Check in later for our week 1 previews. We'll have that for this week because there's a lot of good ones coming up in week 1 in NCAA football.
Yeah. So, I mean, UNLV got the win, but boy, tons of work to be done there. Kansas looked really strong.
Yep.
I mean, they just look strong on all fronts, the offensive line, defensive line.
That's the takeaway from today is that Kansas did exactly what they supposed to do against Fresno State, and UNLV didn't.
Yeah, wraps it up in a bow, right?
And Iowa State and Kansas State, they played how we thought they were going to play too.
And they showed up how you'd expect them to show up. So overall, I mean, thank God football's back. Oh man! So week zero gave us some interesting stuff.
It was
some interesting
good
stuff. All right, I think good place to leave it.
Yep.
All right. So for Jeff Dover, I'm John Barban, and that's your Saturday versus Sunday podcast.